Can you avoid change?
As much as we want to, absolutely not. Unequivocally, no, you cannot avoid change.
I guess, what are the repercussions to like thinking that you can?
I think one of the ways that this plays out is if you think you can avoid change, you're going to try. You're going to structure your life in such a way that it doesn't impact you, or you can avoid it. You can hide from it. And then ultimately what's happening is you're not living life as the rest of humans do, going through change.
Yeah. So you're one of our coaches at Path for Growth. You're also a business owner. You co-own your own business. How has change shown up in your own life? We were just talking before this, and I was like, you're like the most interesting man in the world. You just have such a broad range in your resume. Explain like where you've come from, how change has shown up in your life, and just give us a little bit of insight.
Yeah. One of the things that always jumps out to me is my upbringing. I moved a ton. My dad's a pilot. And when I was younger, we moved from California to Northern Virginia so he could take a job. And then later down to Dallas, Texas, and then back to Virginia. And then I went to school in Knoxville, Tennessee, having never been on UT's campus before, the real UT's campus before. And so I actually just built into my identity. I'm someone who has experience and goes through change constantly. And there's been seasons of life where I've sought it out. There's been seasons of life where there hasn't been as much as I'm accustomed to, but it's just part of, I think a part of who I am is that I'm someone who's encountered in a lot of change. And so how's that play out? I mean, maybe that's why I jumped into co-owning a board game company with some friends. That's maybe why I've made so many leaps across different functions in the business, from finance to accounting, consulting, compliance, and now small business coaching. It's just so natural to how God has shaped my story that I'm just always either navigating it or creating it in my own life, which much to the chagrin of my wife. She's pretty change adverse. One farm, grew up on a 4th generation farm. It just lived one place her whole life. And then I'm like, all right, baby, come on, let's go.
Yeah. I also feel like with your financial background, that plays against the stereotype of what I feel like most people in finances are for, which is like stability, maybe a little more rigid. And I'm speaking with broad strokes, obviously, but yeah, I guess what was that like? Like, what led you to be so interested in finances and that whole realm of things, coming from a background that's just experienced so much volatility?
Yeah. I had not considered a career in accounting or finance as late as my sophomore year of college. I was actually in my accounting 201 class, and I think I was getting like a 99, and the professor pulled me aside and she's like, "Hey, I want you to come to my office. Let's talk about what a career in accounting would look like." And I was like, "Wow, okay, like that sounds good, no problem. I'm not going to stop doing supply chain management, which is what I was studying at the time." And she's like, "That's okay, you could do both." I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." So, so to some extent, just that attitude of things are going to change and, I can go with it. I can go with the flow is what got me into it.
Interesting.
But pretty quickly into my career, I realized that the stereotype of accountants, like they do this thing and in this way, it's actually not that true. Think about, what do you talk to your finance person about? Hey, do we have that in the budget? No. Hey, but I think we need that in the budget. Can we make a change to the budget, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you're constantly navigating cash coming in. Did it come in where we expected? Okay, no. What do we have to change in our budget to offset that? What do we have to do from a profitability standpoint to adjust for the results we're seeing? Oh, money's falling off trees. Great. What do we need to do to adapt? How do we capitalize on this momentum to move forward?
Would you say is change neutral?
No, not at all. Change being neutral. I said this in my talk back in Austin, like change is not neutral. It's not. It will have an impact, right? It'll either force you back from it, like trying to you structure your life or your schedule in a way that you're preventing it from impacting you, which, by the way, then what's happening, everything around you is changing, or it's going to change you, in which case you're hopefully not caught up in it sweeping you away, but it's going to have an impact personally, professionally, in your relationships, in your brain, like it's going to have a change.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about a time when change wasn't neutral, maybe let's start with, tell me about a time when change was negative, like it was detrimental.
Yeah. Well, I can think about, for me personally, I have 4 beautiful children, ages right now 13. I've got a teenage daughter now. That's a big change. That's a good one though. That's not what we're talking about, but 13 down to 3. And between my second and third, my wife and I had our first and second miscarriages. We were, I guess at that point, 6 years into our marriage, and we had 2 children. We'd gotten pregnant pretty easily, no problem. And all of the sudden we encountered this miscarriage, which, man, I'll tell you what, just changed everything. Like how we communicated, how I related to her. It changed our understanding of people who'd gone through infertility or were in the midst of infertility. It had interjected itself into our life in a manner that we couldn't ignore it. And so that first one was like, I was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, yeah, people have miscarriages. No problem. That's no big deal. And then we had another one almost at 19 weeks, pretty far along. And it's like, oh no, like this is a reality that we're going to have to wrestle through. We're going to have to adjust to. And it forced change. Again, not just in how we related to other people, but how I related to my wife, how we had to some extent recover from the trauma of thinking, hey, yeah, we're kind of immune to this thing, and not even really knowing that it's something that we could deal with. To it, I mean, not only altering our relationship, but then our trajectory. We were trying to have kids, 1, 2, 3 years apart, and all of a sudden now we're going to take a break from trying. We're going to work on healing our bodies, reducing stress, all those things. And so we have a 5-year gap between my second and third kid. So it changed the circumstances of where I'm even living today.
Yeah. And this might be really difficult to do, but like if you could pick one thing that experience or those experiences taught you about change, what would it be?
Oh, empathy. I would say about 2 months in to that second miscarriage, my wife had started going to counseling, and her counselor shared with me a Brene Brown video on what is empathy. And up until that point, my belief about empathy was it something you were either naturally gifted with or you didn't have it all, right? It was just totally nature. There was no nurture. And that video, through this experience, taught me that empathy is a skill to be honed and developed. It's something that you could acquire if you had not practiced it in the past. And so I embarked on a journey of, okay, I'm gonna try to practice empathy. It changed everything, not just in how I related to my wife, who at the time she was experiencing these things I didn't understand. Her response emotionally to that loss was different than mine. Yeah. I was grieving the future. She was grieving the present. I had mechanisms to cope with that she didn't. And so when she would say things, I'd be like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But through that change, I had to learn to say, not that looks challenging, but that is challenging. I'm gonna identify with you and say, like, yeah, that's hard. And I wouldn't be on this coaching path that I'm on now if not having learned that skill, which the Lord, in all of his wisdom, taught me through those miscarriages.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's flip it the other way. Like, what's a time in your life when you experienced change that was like huge? Like whether it was just a huge win or it just set you up for success way farther on down the line. Yeah. Do you have any examples?
Yeah. You mentioned I am a partner in a board game company called Keymaster, and we, from 2018, when I joined, through 2021, we went from $150K business up to a $4.5 million business. And that was largely through our best-selling board game Parks. And it was wild, where all of a sudden this hobby business, this thing we do on the side of our desks, experienced a lot of success. What's happening? Things are changing. The industry now knows who we are. We have a product that people really want. And the things that we were doing back then of like, yeah, we'll print a couple thousand and yeah, I guess we'll sell it to Barnes and Noble. That's a good idea. All of a sudden, the stakes changed, and how we had to manage capital. I mean, we had to all of a sudden figure out, how do we print 30,000 games at a time, where the most we'd ever printed in the past was 5. And oh, by the way, this all happened in February of 2020. Like, literally, Target at the time had said, "Hey, do I have time to tell this story?"
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take it back to December 2019. We're sitting around and we're realizing Parks is the best-selling game in its category at Barnes and Noble. And Target, they show up, the retailer, they show up and they say, "Hey, we would love to put Parks on our shelf next fall." We're like, "Oh, absolutely." And they go, "Yeah, okay, great. Here's what we need you to change, though. We need you to make it cheaper, and we need you to make it bigger. We need to make it bigger." And we were like, "Well, we can't afford to make it bigger. It's going to cost more. We can't afford to make it cheaper because we're already probably beyond what is a healthy profit margin." And so we said no, and I kind of wrote it off, like, there's no chance that we're going to have this game on Target shelves. And so we put in an order, and then it was like late February after Chinese New Year, we get a letter from Target. "Yeah, we'd like 15,000 of them." That's like as many as I ordered for not Target, and they're going to want all of it. And that was the same day that our Chinese manufacturer said, "Hey, we're not coming back from Chinese New Year as quickly as we thought. There's just some sickness. No problem. We'll be back up and running in a couple of weeks." Well, lo and behold, we know what happened, right? So, the environment of change was, we've got this amazing product everyone wants. And oh, by the way, we're about to shut down, the government. We're about to shut down your mom and pop retailers. We're going to, your local government's going to determine you can't shop at these places. But thankfully, we're sitting on Target shelves now because they said yes, and we had enough to cover it. So, there is good change when stuff starts, like when you have a plan and all of a sudden that plan results in the outcome and the fruit that you're looking for. How do you respond to it? Because that is in and of itself change when good things happen.
Yeah. So you gave this talk in Austin, and you had kind of broken change down into 3 different categories. What are those categories?
Yeah. So I like to say that there's almost 3 levels. There's change you're going to navigate. This is the day-to-day. We navigate traffic. We navigate a challenging conversation, and you're navigating a difficult relationship. Circumstances, right? Navigating the day-to-day lefts and rights that keep us on the path to where we're going. We know we're trying to go there, but we just have to avoid obstacles, or maybe we find the fast lane. Hey, let's hop in the fast lane. I can get there faster, right? Navigating change. Yep. But then there's times where you're off course, or you realize your target's not what you want any longer. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to create change. You're going to have to alter the trajectory in such a manner that you're going to get a different outcome, right? And this can be a result of results not being where you want them to be. You don't have the cash, you don't have the profitability. That hire that you thought was going to take over marketing, turns out, hey, they weren't very good at it, right? Or any number of things where all of a sudden you're on a path and you realize you're not going to get there. What do you have to do? Well, you have to now create change. You're going to have to be the change agent. And so that's hey, things we do that takes us onto a different course, a different trajectory. And then ultimately, the third type of change is change you endure. This is change that maybe you had some amount of responsibility in it coming to be, but this is such that you don't necessarily control the speed at which you get through the change, or even know where that change is taking you. This is, partnership conflicts. This is personal changes like deaths, like miscarriages. This is change when, like massive, whether it's cultural or economic shifts, prevent you from making progress towards a desired outcome. And so you just have to, endure it. Yeah.
So let's jump into navigating change. How do you navigate change well?
Yeah. The context of the talk we did in Austin was about this idea of long game leadership, right? That if you're gonna play the long game, you have to expand your horizon and service of others, your time horizon and service of others. And so a lot of what I've been thinking about with navigating change is, what are the habits or the practices of leaders that play the long game? And so when I think about navigating change, this is things like, really honing your craft, getting really good at your strengths. As you hone your strengths, as you grow them, what can you do? Well, you can lean on them, right? You understand at a higher competency level how to use those in service of your destination, right? Mm-hmm. Things like Alex. I would give an example of, if Alex was in a leadership conference and there was a hole in the schedule, you wouldn't look at Alex and be like, "Hey, I would love for you to speak," and he'd go like, "No, I just haven't been honing my craft. I'm not ready for this," right? No, like what happens? You want to be ready for that opportunity. You want to step into it. And so I think about that, honing your strengths. I think about things like not getting swept up. And we live in this social media age. I wonder if this will even get clipped into a YouTube short, right? Where opinions and beliefs as a culture want to sweep us up in what? The viralness of a statement or, this hot take. I don't even think we say hot takes anymore, do we?
It's just controversy. And I mean, the whole social media dynamic is just to fuel anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So, yep.
So we talk about not getting swept up. As leaders, we've got to be rooted in something. We've got to understand, we have to understand our beliefs. We have to have wrestled through what we stand for, whether that's your mission, your core values, or even just your beliefs around economically, like how you're going to win. I'm a board game company. We not only create games, but we also sell them. And so what does that mean? Well, when tariffs come along, I've got to figure out not only how to adjust my manufacturing strategy, but also how to adjust my sales strategy. Mm. And if I got swept up in the politics of tariffs, that's where tariffs come along. Like, what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. Should we shut down? Should we increase prices? Like, what is everybody else doing? There's wisdom in thinking about the market, but don't get swept up in the emotions of it. Don't get swept up in what could be or what could go wrong. Like, great leaders have already resolved what they believe as they take in information, and they've got outlets for working through that information. Mm. So that's another one that comes to mind. I mean, there's a couple others.
As far as, so you mentioned the tariffs, like play that out a little bit more. Yeah. Like how did having a set of core values and an identity that you could hold to play out in the way that you navigated tariffs?
Yeah. Keymaster has 4 core values, 2 of which, I just leaned on immensely when that happened. The first is relentlessly resourceful. Mm. We're a scrappy board game company full of scrappy creatives, right? So like when tariffs come along, everybody's dealing with it. And so how can we be relentless in our resourcefulness? Where can we cut the budget in service of keeping prices where they're at? Or where can we tactically deploy cost increases? Maybe like, for example, on products that are already a little bit unprofitable or not as profitable as we want. How can we say like, okay, well, we needed to adjust for this anyway. So let's adjust here in a manner that gets us the result we're looking for. So relentlessly resourceful. That's what I remember getting on a call with my team after, what do we call it? Liberation Day or whatever it was.
Something like that.
I was like, okay, guys, like, hey, this is going to demand resourcefulness from us. And the second is people first. The 2 days after that press conference, I remember one of our biggest competitors had laid off their entire creative staff.
Wow.
I don't, for his business, I think that made sense. They were heavily invested in ads. Like their product required a very high acquisition cost. And so like if you're an acquisition oriented business, when stuff like that comes along, you have to lean towards your strength, right?
Yeah.
Acquisition versus creative. And so, for us, when I remember hearing that, being like, man, like that makes sense why they're doing that, but it doesn't align with our values, which is people first. And so people first comes in 2 forms for us. It was like, okay, what can we do to try to keep our staff employed, to try to make sure that they know what they can do to grow profitability, to protect revenue, to be prudent in spending, right? So we're like, we want to make sure not just you're important to us, but here's ways that you can participate in this.
Yeah.
But then also our customers of like, okay, hey, we fund games on Kickstarter. And on Kickstarter, what are you doing? You're giving money for a future promise.
Yep.
And so what does people first look like? Hey, Kickstarter backers, we're navigating the tariff situation, but know that we're committed to these games getting to the US and us fulfilling it to you, if possible, without charging you more for that. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by great partnerships, by looking again at ways that maybe we can get a reduced shipping cost. It might take now a week longer, but hey, if it's in service of not charging customers more, we're now open to that versus...
Yeah. Well, with Kickstarter too, they've already waited months.
Yeah.
A week probably isn't going to make much of a difference.
Oh, so. It turns out it's longer than a week. There's man, when you're staring down the barrel of 143% increase in your unit cost, we were like, please hold, like, factory, please just slow down a little bit, like while we figure out what we're going to do here. Right.
Yeah. Making sure like maintaining an inventory is, I don't have that headache. I wouldn't wish that headache on anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll never forget, my sister bought Parks for me during its first Kickstarter. And it was for a birthday gift. And then I think as Kickstarters go, it showed up months later, but she brought it to me when we went camping in Montana a few months later. And this was during the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah, 2020. And it's like I still have the original. So then when I met you and I was like, no way,
you pulled it
like,
off the shelf.
Yeah. I was like, this is crazy.
You've got that first edition. We had a special sleeve, and you were like, look what I got. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen one of those in 5 years.
Yeah, collector's item at this point probably. Anyway, I mean, it sounds like not only did your core values help you or prevented you from getting swept up, but it also kind of pivots on that first point you made of like honing your skills. Like if you had established this scrappiness as, I don't know, what was the term you used for your first core value?
Relentlessly resourceful.
Like if you had established that as a core value in your culture ahead of time, like you had the forward thinking and the conviction to establish that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then it came into play. And I mean, at that point, if it's a core value, hopefully that means that it's a strength of your team. Yeah, that's really cool.
Not aspirational, right? That's something we coach and teach a lot. It comes up when I'm working with a new customer and we get to core values and they're like, oh, I would love it if we're like this. And I'm like, great. That's an aspiration. That's not a core value.
Yep.
If you're not that already, then that's probably not what you value. Because if you valued it, it would be actively playing out.
Yeah.
You can desire it. You can even as a CEO say like, hey, we are going to aspire to that. But it's not a core value until it's actually active and present and represents your team at its best today.
Yeah. Was there anything on the back end of that you looked at and you were like, oh, we didn't navigate this well, or maybe we did fall off of our core values in these areas?
Yeah.
Or was it something where you looked back and you're like, man, like we handled that the best that we could, and we established, we stayed true to our core values and who we are as a company, and like we're going to charge on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we did end up having to let some people go a couple months later. And when I look back, there's absolutely some things we were not seeing then. I'll step back. Someone asked me, actually, this was on our team meeting on Friday, hey, what's something you're grateful for that was unexpected? And I just said tariffs. Not because I'm glad that tariffs exist or I'm glad they don't, not for political reasons.
Yeah.
But purely because it did accelerate the identification of some weaknesses in our business. And so there was a certain amount of, I mean, it's always sorrowful. It's always a little bit of hindsight, biased when you have to go through layoffs and you go like, man, I could have done those things differently. But what I do think we did well was say like, here's what we're committed to. We're going to do our best to use our capital to keep this thing going while we figure out where we're going, right? A little bit of enduring change, right? Like, we were navigating the circumstances, but also like, hey, are tariffs going to happen? Are we going to get a trade deal? okay, cool. Like, well, how do we keep this as close to the chest as possible in a wise way so that if tariffs went away, if we had a trade deal, I've got my staff, we can hit run, we can let's go back into growth mode. But yeah, I mean, I think we look back and I'd say there was some profitability that I ran the numbers on, and I kind of assumed like, okay, if we sell this much at this level, we'll be doing okay. But I didn't foresee how poorly consumer confidence would take a dip.
Yeah,
and so I couldn't have known that. So Annie Duke talks about decision making. She's got a book called Thinking in Bets. I've referenced it on the pod before. Here we go. It comes back again. And the last time I said, I don't know if I'd recommend this book. I've now talked about it twice. Maybe I should recommend the book. But in it, she talks about this idea of resulting, the idea of we evaluate a decision based on its result versus based on the decision itself. And I think at the time, our decision to keep people on was good and right. It was good and right.
Yeah.
I didn't love the result we got, but
yeah, for sure. What are the other points you have as far as navigating change?
Mm-hmm. The talk was on 3 figures of, I mean, one being Winston Churchill, a figure of history, one being Elon Musk, who's alive and to some extent is creating history, and then another, a pastor, Tim Keller, who I deeply respect. In all of these men, you see that they were students of history. And so I think if you're going to navigate change, instead of trying to figure it out all by yourself and have to filter it all through your experiences, go learn from people who have been through change before. In the last 3 years, I've just devoured biographies. It's been such a great joy. And man, I'll tell you what, they challenged me personally and kind of vision for my own life and for my business, challenged me as a leader and like, oh, here is the standard. How did they got there through practice, through, working on their craft, right? Again, and by seeing, oh, this person did this. Okay, well, I can try that too. So be a student of history. That's a big one. One of my success statements from my talk in Austin was people would leave wanting to read a biography.
Nice.
And I can tell you I'm green.
Let's go.
It feels good to be green, as we say, good to be green. See with your own eyes. That's another navigating change principle. I think you see this a lot with Elon. You see this with people like Steve Jobs. Man, they are eyes on the scene. They trust their leaders. They trust that the information that they're getting from their leaders is good and true, but also they trust and verify.
Yeah.
So they're at the site, like looking at customers, or they're on the manufacturing line and questioning requirements.
Yeah. What's the line there between like micromanaging and still being aware of what's actually going on the ground?
Yeah. I think as a coach, this is something I'm keenly aware of, because I part of what I do with my customers is we spend 90 minutes on the phone and they fill out a prep form in advance, which has just got some diagnostic questions to kind of pull out what might we talk about on our call. And a lot of times you've got to understand that perception is reality, right? Or that there's what we call a felt need versus a real need. And so I have to, when I show up to a call, hey, you put this in your prep form. That sounds really challenging. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? It's not that I'm not taking what they say at face value. I'm trying to pull back the layers so that I don't just see through their eyes. That's not helpful. If you hire a coach just to see like you see things, you're not getting new perspective. One of our 3 pillars of coaching, like we're providing accountability, we're providing perspective, and we're providing direction. And so like I have to deploy curiosity to say, what are you seeing? Mm-hmm. And what else might be seen from a different perspective? And so when you're seeing through other people's eyes, whether that's your staff, your spouse after a long day of work, you have to be really curious. You have to be relational. You got to make sure that, hey, like I see you, I believe you, I trust you. Is it possible that we could look at it through a different perspective? Elon is notorious for this. A lot of people will, criticize him because he'll show up at someone's workstation and just question everything about it. Probably a pretty uncomfortable experience. But at the end, when he's right and you've built into your process something that was unneeded, and he's just showed up to question it. Is that micromanaging, or is that just him helping you get better at what you're doing or helping the product get to where it needs to be? You're going to step on toes, like seen for your own eyes. You're going to step on people's toes. When Winston Churchill decides, hey, French population, they're on the brink of surrendering and capitulating to the Germans. He saw it and he goes like, man, we got to deal with this now before it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Seeing with your own eyes before it's a problem, right? Every big problem was such a small problem a leader failed to address.
Yeah.
Sometimes that just requires seeing. As far as micromanaging, yeah, sometimes you're going to step out of line. Well, so what do we need to do? We need to be leaders who practice health, who practice, we have a sounding board, maybe a leadership team around us to say, hey, that was too far, or you need to come on up one level out of that. But there's seasons where, yeah, you got to get on the front lines. I don't know if that's a guide to how to not micromanage, but
no, I think it was helpful. Yeah, I think just making that distinguishment between, there's a difference between like trusting your people and trusting the systems you put in place, and then also like not micromanaging constantly, like being able to, in many ways, like, and we'll talk about this later, but yeah, be a non-anxious presence, like show up to verify, but not increase like unnecessary, like turmoil or anxiety among the people that you're leading. So
a lot of the examples that I pulled into my talk, I think about the reality that Winston Churchill was in the trenches during World War I on the Western Front. He saw the horrific nature of trench warfare. And so, of course, when he got back later, he advocated like, we should not be doing this.
Yeah.
And so that's not micromanaging. That's just seeing things in a manner that you go like, I now know this. I've seen it. I've felt it. It's reality.
Yeah.
It's not someone else's report to me. It's a report that I have firsthand. And that's just important sometimes.
Well, because it can create empathy. Yeah. Like you can actually empathize with the reality of the people that you're leading and making decisions of. I mean, yeah, I come from a military background. I feel like that was often one of the biggest pain points in leadership is the people in DC have been like sifting through the same roles for the last 10 years. And all of them are like so disconnected from the reality of what it's like to be here, like on the ground, that sometimes the decisions they make, you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? You know? What else about navigating change before we move on?
There's one more, and this is kind of a summation of all of what I extracted from Churchill's life in particular was when you're navigating change, you need to be prepared to act swiftly. Like great leaders make decisive decisions, take decisive action because they're prepared in advance, right? They haven't gotten swept up in opinions. They have honed their strengths in advance. They've studied how history played out in the past. And so they've got these clues, something we talk about in coaching, success leaves clues. They've got all these clues of other successful leaders. So when it becomes time to take action, they're prepared for it.
Yeah.
And they're prepared in a manner that they can act swiftly. There's just countless examples of products, of military leaders, whoever it is, just like the preparation to take a decisive action and to move with speed has just created such great reward in them. So it's like we as leaders, we need to have the mentality of prepare. You're a Coast Guard guy, so like what semper paratus, right? Always ready. And that's true. Like, how can you say I'm always ready? Well, because you've prepared.
Yeah.
Readiness is not it's not an attitude, it's a habit.
Yeah. Dang, put that on a t-shirt.
Oh, there you go. Merch.
Let's move on to creating change. I know you've already mentioned a few people. Who is someone you look up to when it comes to creating change?
Yeah, look up to.
Or
I don't know if that's a leading.
Maybe you do it well.
Yeah. One of my favorite biographies I've read in recent years was Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon, which is very interesting because he's still alive. In fact, when I originally pitched this talk to Alex in February of this past year, I was like, hey, I think I want to do a talk, and I think I'm going to pull Elon into it. When we were going to Austin, like, I think this makes sense. Like, we're going to be in Austin. we've got a lot of
Checks out.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Tesla there. Like what are we going to do? I think they've been launching the taxis in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one while we were there. Anyway, I it's so fascinating. He's still alive. So we actually can't judge the outcome of his life yet. I think that's why it's just so dangerous to pull in current leaders and say, be like this person. Because we don't know. Have they finished the race?
Yep.
That said, if you were to close the history books on Elon right now, dude he's done some stuff, right?
Yeah.
He's created a lot of change in our society. So I think I would say Isaacson's biography, in particular, he highlights how Elon thinks about change. Whether you're talking about his algorithm, which is his 5-step process for taking in his case his manufacturing line and accelerating its speed, its reliability, its quality, right? Or he talks about the idiot index, like how do you take really complicated things and make them simpler? I just think that the way he thinks and questions what you and I take for granted as true is really admirable. Now, the way he goes about it, I would not say that Elon practices healthy growth.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't mean we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. Elon's someone who comes to mind.
You mentioned the process that he goes through. Break that down.
Yeah. 5 steps. Number 1, question every requirement. Why is it a requirement? Who created the requirement? Is it a requirement worth following? Yeah, whether he says like the smarter the person who created the requirement, the more you have to question it.
Nice.
Because I so often we assume that the smartest person in the room got to the right answer. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair for them. I mean, I definitely have been in a situation around Alex where I'm like, I could really use some advice from Alex, but I think I'm the smartest guy in the room on this. So I guess I can't ask the question. Like to some extent, we can serve our teams by questioning them in a manner that's fruitful, healthy, and treats them like humans.
Yeah.
But yeah, number 1, question every requirement, because there's nothing worse than doing something well that shouldn't be done at all. Right. So you got to question, should we be doing this? And then, okay, step number 2 of the algorithm, delete what's not absolutely necessary. That Peter Drucker quote of like, it just sucks to do things and like to do them well and to spend time on things that you realize years later, we shouldn't have done that at all. They had a couple of board games we've made where I'm like, we shouldn't have done that at all. Like, should this game actually exist, or should this product actually exist? And that doesn't feel good. And so going through, like, it can be leadership, us unleashing the best in others, acting in their best interest. It can be good to question that and then just say, hey, let's not do that anymore. That's not what's absolute best. Elon has a really great diagnostic for this. If you don't add 10% of what you delete back, then you probably didn't delete enough. Right? Which is just such a great thought exercise to go like, man, we shouldn't be doing that anymore. Okay, let's stop doing it. Well, actually, it turns out there was a little bit that we should do. So let's pull that back in. It's just a helpful diagnostic to go like, we probably are doing more than's absolutely necessary, which means what? We're creating organizational drag. We're creating frustration. We're doing things that don't expand our territory or help us in pursuit of provision of resources, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the second thing. Delete. Third step of the algorithm is to simplify what remains. So it's not just enough to delete, but the things that are requirements, the things that are necessary, the things that are left over, we should simplify. Like complexity compounds, simplicity scales. And so we've got to be training our leaders. We've got to be taking our actions ourselves to simplify what is the simplest version of this idea, this process, this step that gets us to the same exact outcome. And as a finance guy, I love that, right? Profitability, simple, less to get the same result. That's what we want to do. Once we simplify it, step 4 is to speed up the cycle time. Let's get reps in. Okay, hey, we think this is the simplest version. Okay, great. Well, we're not just going to assume that this is the simplest version. Let's test it. And so get lots and lots and lots of reps. I have been looking into a new nuclear reactor company, a nuclear energy company, who's taking the SpaceX model, right? Start with something really simple, just the Falcon 1, and let's get really, really good at that at the cheapest level to the point where we can just almost manufacture results. Then let's get a little more complicated or a little further in what we want to do, further into space, further in our capabilities. But he's like, hey, I want to make the smallest, the minimum viable product for a nuclear reactor so that we can then mass produce them. We're not going to try to make one giant 20 gigawatt reactor. We're going to make 100 10 megawatt reactors, whatever. I'm not a nuclear physicist, so I'm still in this phase of learning. But it's that idea of like, okay, once we make the first one, then we're gonna make the second one, then we're gonna make the third one, then we're gonna make the fourth one, and hopefully by the 20th one, we're ready to do something new, different. Like we've gotten so good at this that we'll be able to tackle a harder project a little more. So that's step 4, simplify. And then step 5, automate. A lot of us, I think, even could say, hey, we're pretty good at the simplifying process, but then we just kind of let it be, or we delegate it to an employee who's scared to automate it, right? Because they're like, but this is what I do. This is what I get paid for. And so the fifth step of the algorithm is to automate it. Why? Because if a computer or a robot can do it at 85% of the quality level as you, right? Like, well, that's how we treat other humans. Like, let's delegate this process to someone else who can do it, nearly as well as me. Well, man, I'll just tell you what, it's a lot cheaper to automate it. And then once we've automated it, okay, it's not always a lot cheaper to automate it. Let's automate what should be automated. And that's a whole other podcast. But if you can automate it and then deploy whoever was doing that in a different way. Why? Because you've simplified another process. You're speeding up that cycle time. They need to be deployed over there. So that's his 5-step algorithm. He did it at Twitter too. That's a whole other story. That's probably my favorite part.
He's done a lot. I mean, he tried to do it in the government, and the verdict is probably still out on how that went.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, especially in the space of manufacturing, like it just makes sense, right? But how do you take that mentality and include like the empathy and care for the human beings on your team?
I mean, I lived this out at Keymaster. One of my other business partners, Maddox, he's our he's our creative lead. And man, I'll tell you what, if you question requirements of a creative, it could get real messy real fast. You know what I mean? Hey, why did you do that? Okay, whoa. First of all, don't use the word why. Here, just pro tip. Like this one's for free, right? Why is the language of shame. So what led you to that decision versus why did you make that decision? So one of the ways that this plays out is for he and I, as he's designing a new game or he's got an idea for the visuals of a product, I'm going to come alongside. I'm going to put on my consumer hat. I'm going to put on my P&L hat, and I'm going to start asking him lots of questions. What about this do people want to pay for? Where are we capturing value that the consumer can actually feel that they want to pay for? What reason do we have for keeping that rule in the game? How could we simplify this, right? So you're just asking lots of questions, being curious, so that the requirements, which by the way, people are going to trick themselves into requirements all the time. And so you can't tell them. You could. I've tried. Doesn't always work as well as you would hope. You can't tell them what to do. And so how do we serve people through creating change with a lot of questions? Not only us asking questions, but teaching them to ask questions. Well, Matt, what about this rule is blocking you from approving this build? Well, nothing. I'm just curious, what is this rule creating? Oh, okay. Now we're partners together. You might have come with an assumption, or Maddox has come with an assumption that I'm trying to get rid of this rule. And so like in practice of serving others, we have to be genuinely curious, not just directionally curious.
Yeah. Empathy goes a long way.
It does.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
In the last few minutes that we have, I'd love to just jump into your third point or third type of change, which is change you have to endure.
Yeah.
Where does that come from for you? Why did you include that? And then, maybe can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So many of the great leaders that we hold up in history as worthy men and women who played the long game went through seasons of challenge, whether that's personal loss, being on the outside, missing their target. It's just over and over and over again. I've observed this in my study of great men and women. And then personally, I've encountered this, right? I've talked a little bit about our season of miscarriages. I mean, that 1 year where we were really in it, life didn't stop. Yeah, I had a pretty decent leader who gave me a lot of space to spend some time with my wife, and he acknowledged that I was a little bit snippy, right, on some calls, and but that season, it was unclear where my marriage was going. It was unclear how it had changed things, and so just over and over and over again, it's clear that we're going to go through seasons. That's God's going to lead us into desert places where we can rely on Him. I mean, I think speaking to believers, we talk about these desert places, and oftentimes we're talking about times where I just didn't really experience God. I didn't feel God, and it's like, okay, cool. Like that can be a season you're enduring, but that doesn't necessarily align with this idea of challenges of hey, we're off course, we're not sure what the end is. That's just, hey, I'm not connected with God. No, like there's seasons when you're enduring change. What happens? You draw near to God. You cling to Him. I used to joke I lead a lot of men at my church through discipleship, through leadership training, and every once in a while, a guy will be like, "Man, sometimes I just want to pray that God brings me low like that time, from before." And I'm like, listen, like, if that's what you want to pray, like, just know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Like, the Lord will. He'll bring you low to say, like, where is your full weight leaning?
Yeah.
And so again, leaders throughout time, yeah, absolutely. They're not all believers. They're leaning on something, Abe Lincoln leaning on the impact of emancipation. Winston Churchill leaning on the importance of him getting personal glory for his family. But I think as believers, we have the unique joy in enduring change to realize that we have a God who we can lean on, who is able to sympathize with us in our weakness, and who endured temptation to the end. Beyond, right? He endured temptation without sin. So, I mean, again, when you're talking about enduring change, there's some things that we can do, habits we can practice, prayer, memorization of scripture, of poetry, being around other people, older people who we can lean on, developing relationships. But the reality is we're going to encounter seasons where stuff is got us in a funk, and beyond a funk, like where we're really in the midst of challenging circumstances in our lives.
Yeah. What are a couple of things that you think are like pivotal for being able to endure change?
Yeah. I would say for me, because I've been in a season of this for the last couple of years, spending time praying the Psalms. If you're a believer and you maybe haven't, like me, given enough respect to the Psalms of a tool for prayer, as a tool for reflection, spend time every single day in the Psalms. I have a Crossway makes these cool journaling Bibles where it's just like one book, and it's on very thick paper. So when you write on it, it's not bleeding through the black. Nice,
good move.
Yeah, a lot of ghosting going on some of those thin line ESVs. So I have a Psalm Bible, and what I do every day is I get into a Psalm and I just mark the date, and occasionally I'll write circumstances from the day before. I'll write a significant event. I'll write out a prayer in response to the Psalm. I'll rewrite a part of the Psalm in my own context to just, one, get it out of being like, man, there's actually a lot of emotion in the midst of what I'm going through. And so often seeing it in the Psalms will help us see it in ourselves. But then the second thing is, as I go through, basically I get through it twice a year, I can go back and be like, what was I thinking about when I read this Psalm back in April? Oh, man, that was a hard day.
Mm-hmm.
And look at how the Lord has brought me out of that. Look at how he has provided. Or, oh man, the Lord still got me in that. Why don't I feel the need like I felt 6 months ago? Because I've kind of grown calloused to it. That's not good. I need to lean back into this again. And so I didn't think having a way to journal and reflect on seasons that you're going in, so that when you're either out of it, looking back, you can remember the faithfulness of God, or when you're still in it, you can go like, okay, this promise is still true. Have I believed it less? And if so, I need to repent of that and get back into it.
It's amazing how much remembering creates resilience. Like the ability to remember what God has done in your life previously, or even just read scripture and remember what he's done for the world and for his people, and how much that like resilience in your spirit that can really create.
Yeah.
In closing, I know there's a poem that is just very dear to you personally, in the ways that you've had to navigate change. I'd love to just close out with you reading that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I said is, if you're going through seasons, how do you prepare to act swiftly, right? That's going back to the navigating change. Well, part of that is preparing for also seasons that you have to endure. And one of the ways that we can do that is by memorizing scripture, or in some cases, poetry. Something that I think the manlier side of me is like, wait a second, no, but
it's all right. David was a warrior and a poet.
That's right. That's right. The warrior poet. So Rudyard Kipling's If. I first encountered this 3.5 years ago. I think actually from my coach. I was a customer of Path for Growth before I was a coach with Path for Growth, and she had shared it with me in the beginning of a challenging season of conflict. And man, I just it's so obvious every time I read this, like, this is worthy, these different attributes of what enduring change looks like. So I can go for it. Just
go for it.
All right. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or be lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it all on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. If you want more content like this, we've got some killer stuff planned. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Let's go, let's go, let's go.